That's what businesses do. Family bonds, like all other traditional bonds, can get in the way of that. First of all, capitalism wants the maximum allocation of labor to the right places. And it may be that a father should be working in one place and a mother should be working someplace else. Also, the capitalism is never like the mother at home. The homemaker has always been seen as a waste of human resources. She'd be better off to be in the labor pool where she can help hold wages down. Capitalism, in theory, has always opposed the family wage principle. Back in the 1920s, it was still openly opposing efforts by state and federal governments to regulate child labor. Again, it wanted access to labor, again, to keep costs down. And generally, it's always favored free immigration. Again, it wants the cheapest labor it can get. Again, why? Well, for logical economic reasons, to keep labor costs down so they can maximize profit and market share. So you have to look at it. Just business has a different incentive structure, and families, just like local communities, get in the way unless there are other variables brought in. Many family-held businesses are tied to their community and feel an attachment to their workforce that makes them behave differently. And I can point to many, many examples of those kinds of businesses which see themselves as part of a community, will stay there no matter what happens. They won't move the jobs to China. But the mega corporations of the modern world have almost no attachments to place. They are free-floating combines of capital and enterprise, and they will go, again, where labor is cheapest, or at least cheap labor is going to be found, rather than investing in communities. They'll abandon a community at the drop of a hat if they can see an advantage to do so.
We're talking about family-centered economy. Dr. Allan Carlson, author of the book Third Ways, is our guest. We're giving this book away to listeners with best questions or comments during our conversation. 505-7850, 1-800-730-2727, or issues etc at kfuo.org. Let's go to the phones and see what Mark has to say, calling from his car. Hi, Mark.
Hi. I'm so thrilled by everything you were just saying. I almost forgot my question. But I've been reading about the relationship of money to a society, and specifically fractional reserve banking, inflation, and fiat currency. It's most poignant, I think, in the French Revolution, the German Reichsmark of the 20s, and now American dollar through the last 100 years. I was just wondering if you might be able to explore that area a little bit, the overthrow of sort of social institutions in any society by this increase of the shekel, so to speak.
All right, Mark, thank you very much. I think you're touching a soft spot there in Dr. Carlson's heart.
Well, it's a very good question, and most of the writers I dealt with in this book don't go deeply into monetary issues, which may be a weakness on the case of some of them. But your caller is exactly right there. The modern fiat money system, which rests really pretty much just on faith, in the end. As late as 1964, here in the United States, you could still take your dollar bill down to a bank and you get yourself a silver dollar in return. And as late as 1933, you could take your $20 note or something down to the bank and get yourself a $20 gold piece back. Those days are long gone. The money supply is based on a whole different set of concepts, ultimately which rely upon faith in the system. And if that faith disappears, there are going to be problems. Again, this I think underscores the fragility of the modern economy, which is another point that the distributist writers I've mentioned always talked about. They were widely criticized by the orthodox free market economists for for being fanciful in their belief that everybody could have property, would know how to use it. Their response was that the modern free market economy rests on a much deeper leap of faith, and in fact has repeatedly shown itself to be remarkably fragile to the slightest problem that comes along, or more remarkably, it's always been an unsettled vehicle. The most recent, the collapse of the housing market, which we're just, I think, in the throes of, maybe just at the start of right now, it threatens to pull the whole economy down. It was just another example of a regular, repeated surge of speculation, which, if anybody calmed down for a moment and stepped back, could see it was not going to last. It didn't have any foundation to it, and now we're paying the price in a weakened dollar, in a falling stock market, in a huge trade imbalance. We've got some serious problems again as a result of an economy that rests on a new kind of faith that really isn't very Christian.
Scott's listening in St. Charles. Scott, thanks for waiting.
Yes, I have a question. I work for a Fortune 100 corporation, and we often find ourselves enslaved, whether we would like it or not, to the market share paradigm, the accounting paradigm. We don't have a mechanism, even when we seek one, we don't have a mechanism to measure our social or our cultural impact. Can you talk a little bit about that, sir?
That was a brilliant question, Scott. Thank you very much. I mean, really about business looking at what it's doing to families or not doing to families.
Well, it is. It's a very precise and important question. And it is true, our accounting systems right now don't take into account about half of human economic activity, or maybe even more than half. Like specifically, our accounting systems don't count, say, the economic contribution of a mother who makes a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for her child, or the father who mows his own lawn, or the woman who nurses her child. I mean, to be frank, these are all economic acts, but they're not counted, they're not monetized, and in the end, they're ignored by policymakers, by economists, with a few exceptions like Gary Becker, who've tried to find a way to bring them into account.